Well, hello, that's me again. Today is February 3, 2025. Let me see if I can change the zoom of this thing. No, it can't, but okay. And it's Monday. Happy Monday, everybody. And we live in the world of total fantasy. I mean, it is so much fantasy when we talk about the obviously combined West that you only left just in awe. Your joy is on the floor. And the problem is not that, for example, as I am on record for years, not just for some, weeks or months. I'm writing about it since the first term of Donald J. Trump, and after 2018, when he made the appointment of Mr. Bolton to his position of the National Security Advisor. That is when I wrote in my blog. You can go back and find it easily. Just type in Bolton and all that, in the search, and you will get it. The fact that essentially the guy didn't know what he was doing because he doesn't. So I heard many times that he is a bright guy. He might be in a street, smart way. He is. He obviously is the dealer and realer, if you wish, in New York real estate, and so it requires some type of the very specific qualities. And whenever dealing with this type of the, which is essentially mafioso, mafia-run real estate market in New York. But this is by far not enough when you have to deal with the issues which the global community, essentially, the whole world is facing. And he does what he does. He continues to do it. He continues to lie. And here it is. One of the reasons why I'm saying lie, because this is a straight lie, straight hot air balloon stuff, into the face. And when you look at this, you just have to ask yourself a question. What is he thinking? And here it is. This is from today, and yes, it's been around for a while. And Mr. Trump says that talks with Russia and Ukraine are going pretty well. And guess what? This is how he defines the talks. Washington has meetings scheduled with representatives from Moscow and Kiev, the US president said. So I have to immediately add here that Kremlin, by the words of Mr. Peskov, who is the spokesperson for Kremlin, and of course Mr. Rybkov, first deputy of the foreign minister of Russian Federation, they stated that we didn't have any contacts. Nobody contacted us. But evidently, Mr. Trump, because he evidently scheduled something with most likely Ukrainian side, he thinks that these are actually negotiations and they're going pretty well. And so here's him verbatim. We have meetings and talks scheduled with various parties, including Ukraine and Russia. And I think those discussions are actually going pretty well. Yeah, sure, you can. We knew that he will talk to Russians in some capacity and in some sense, especially appointing this guy, Mr. Keith Kellogg, who will be laughed at with his, pretense of the power and having a great hand in poker. But in reality, he is empty. And yes, there is no plan. There never was. And the only plan which they have, let me explain. And so, obviously, Mr. Keller continues to say that I think the same as, I think both sides will give a little bit. He noted Fox News. I don't know where Mr. Kellogg, who is nothing but actually two-star general, not very obviously articulate and not very well prepared for the realities of the 21st century warfare or special military operation. I don't know where they pulled this information from. Well, we know where they're pulling it from, and it is all about PR. It is all about the only thing American establishment is capable of doing. This is PR, propaganda, and throwing things out there, and just looking or expecting or anticipating whatever will stick to the wall, essentially. And this is what is happening. But this is very well immediately clarified by none other than Russian foreign intelligence service, SVR. And here is the so-called plan, which is a no-go from the start. And Russians are very clear about it. NATO plans to oust Zelensky, Russian intel says. NATO is considering trying to facilitate the removal of Ukrainian leader Vladimir Zelensky from power by discrediting him ahead of potential elections next fall. The Russian Foreign Intelligence Service SVR claimed in a statement on Monday the agency believed that Western officials see Zelensky as a key obstacle to peace talks with Moscow. Those officials obviously in the West have no clue, which you would expect, and Zelensky is just the part of the problem, which is much larger. It is much larger than Zelensky, and it is much larger than Europe and its officials. And so here is what SVR states, which is clear, remember the Dune by Frank Herbert, and especially beautifully played out in Lynch's version of it, where Tufer Hava tells to Paul that the first step in avoiding the trap is knowing about its existence. And yeah, this is the only thing, that's the plan, so-called plan from the West. Western leaders are looking to freeze the conflict by pushing both Moscow and Kiev towards negotiation. But Zelensky is seen as a barrier. And here is this delusion, this fantasy land those people in Washington and elsewhere live, because Zelensky is, as I already stated, is just the part of the problem. The actual problem is not even Ukraine. It is the security architecture in Europe and globally. And in this respect, I mean, Russia will not allow to freeze anything. And obviously, for some reason, people in Washington believe that they are so irresistible in their charm and their, profound beauty and shine, being so shiny, that Russia will simply, just fall back and, will accept any kind of stupid terms they try to impose on Moscow, which is, of course, a complete delusion, as I already stated. And Trump is doing what he does most of the time, using the verbiage of the high schooler with constant repetition of those adjectives like wonderful, beautiful, and things of this nature, trying to, blow the smoke up our asses, because there is nothing to show for it. And Russians are very clear what is the foundation for any kind of negotiations. And any kind of negotiations are very simply stated in the December 2021 requirements issued, peremptory, ultimatum, whatever the hell you can call it, by Russian Foreign Ministry, and of course during the Istanbul meetings, which have been sabotaged by the United States and United Kingdom. And the foundation could be served as the starting point with, and I repeat this again, considering the realities on the ground. And realities on the ground, to put it mildly, are such that Mr. Kellogg, who has issues obviously with understanding basic mathematics, let alone the algebra, which deals with the calculation stuff, they better look up the real numbers of what is happening in what's now is basically the former Ukraine. And I want to bring your attention to extremely important video, which is there by Colonel Daniel Davis. And he interviews our well-known man, and yeah, I am not afraid to admit that one of the great military thinkers of the United States, Colonel Douglas Macgregor. And while he says that in this video, and I strongly suggest you to go out there and listen to this video very, accurately, very focused, having the attention, completely fixated on this 13, well, it's actually, yeah, it's 13 minutes. So it's not a very difficult, so to speak, labor if you wish to listen to attentively. And first, both colonels, they make two incredibly important points. Douglas MacGregor states the number of the KIAs in Ukraine. Actually, he is somewhat ahead of my estimates and the estimates by many serious analysts in Russia and elsewhere. We said slightly above 1 million KIAs. Actually, he talks about 1.2 million KIAs in the armed forces of Ukraine. So essentially, several iterations have been wiped out. But then, as I already stated many times, it is sort of well-known figure. You can multiply this number of the KIAs by approximately 2.5, sometimes depending on the circumstances, you can go as 3. That will be the number of the wounded. And of course, the wounds which you get nowadays in the modern battlefield are absolutely horrendous. And so if you multiply it even by 2, you have 1.2 million killed in the armed forces of Ukraine, and you have about 2.4 million wounded. It is a catastrophe on unimaginable scale, for example, which many people in Pentagon simply have no ability to grasp, especially when Mr. MacGregor himself says that, and many people write and talk about that, once you get to the, the brigadier general type level, the only thing the American generals think about is how to get to the 3-star general, because that's what's gonna make them a millionaire. And Douglas MacGregor and Daniel Davis, they talk about it, about utter corruption of American military establishment. And I've been talking about this for a long time, and now you have to understand what, again, there are people who are by no means, these are courageous people, they are combat veterans, granted that it is combat in primarily the beating the crap out of the Saddam's army, but they talk about the moral degeneration and United States Army and armed forces staining themselves with such things like that. For example, this is what Minister of Defense of Russian Federation talks about, that on February 1, the Ukrainian armed forces committed another war crime by launching a targeted missile strike on a boarding school in the city of Sudzha. You know what they did? They basically corralled the civilians, innocent civilians, into this boarding school. 94 people have been recovered so far. And so what they did, they launched HIMARS missiles from Sumy region, and this was registered by the Russian air defense. And so basically they killed those people. They just continued to kill civilians. Guess who gives those orders? Guess who gives this targeting, and including those people who program, so to speak, all those missiles and all those strikes? Correct. NATO military. These are US military. These are people who are actually very good at fighting civilians. They're not good at fighting the real war, but because obviously they never faced the real enemy, with the exception of Vietnam, and we all know how Vietnam War ended for the United States, but that's what they do. And they smeared themselves, and we're not even talking about the, such advisors as the United Kingdom, all the MI6 and whatever the hell they have there as military people, because they are good only at terrorism, state-sponsored terrorism. They are not good at fighting real war. In fact, none of them knows what the real war is. And this is the point I repeat non-stop, and I will continue to repeat it non-stop, because it has to be understood. They are simply not ready. And as already have been stated, that Douglas MacGregor and Daniel Davis, when discussing this, it is one, me, some former Soviet junior officer talking about this, totally another when you have the colonel rank, people who graduated, all those actual real cadre officers of the US Army. They fought in the Gulf War, and so they know what they're talking about when talk about US Army. And their opinions and their statements are corroborated by very many people. how this whole corruption starts. And it starts, believe me, it doesn't start with the two-star general level. It starts from the military academies, where they taught all kind of the confabulated history, absolutely are not taught real operational art and real tactics. They don't even have the proper data sets to pretend even that they understand what is going on. And what is going on, we already know. And if you are, well, there are losses for today. I'm not going to be giving you even the actually the table, because it's was there since 2 days ago, but it's again 1500 KIAs, and Russians just moving, non-stop essentially. And so the fact is, even CNN begins to admit this. There is no future, even a potential ceasefire sparks little hope in eastern Ukraine. This is written by some, whatever the hell, those, chuvavas who work for CNN. And they talk about this, in a little bit detail. And as you can see yourself, that the urgent question echoing in Ukraine frontline bunkers and in the ruins of besieged towns, where ubiquitous exhaustion begs for peace, but where a costly learned distrust of Russia rules. Well, nobody cares if they distrust Russia or not. Their military objective, the Russia achieving really well, is physical annihilation of the armed forces of Ukraine. And this is exactly what is happening. And so they talk about that anxiety is manifold. Would a ceasefire hold? Would Russia just use it to re-equip and attack again? Would Moscow even want it, given its fast winning ground? Yeah, that's the whole point. First, there will be no ceasefire. You have to understand that. Russia is not stopping anything and continues to do what it's doing. And again, the main objective is not some kind of Platonesque running and, capturing territory. It is physical annihilation of Ukrainian forces. Period. This is the main objective. And so they ask, actually, they sneaked this kind of legitimate question that would Moscow even want it? Absolutely. That's the whole point. Who is to be such an idiot as to want to some kind of the ceasefire when actually the fate of the armed forces of Ukraine is basically set? It's decided, the same as the fate of NATO, in terms of NATO being humiliated militarily. And you can go and start to, itemize this humiliation militarily in whatever way you want, operationally, tactically, technologically, and we'll talk about this shortly. But so this is what it is. And yes, Russians have no intention of freezing anything. But yes, Mr. Trump is, and all this, cabal around him, they pretend that this is what Russians want, and they will agree on it, which of course they will not. But, just let's wait and see. But then we have obviously the thing which is Mr. Putin went on record talking to Mr. Zarubin, and he is absolutely correct, stating what everybody now quoting, that European elites will stand at Trump's foot and wag their tails. Absolutely. As Mr. Putin stated yesterday, I assure you, Trump, with his character, with his perseverance, he will put things in order there in Europe quite quickly. And all of them, you will see, it will happen quite quickly soon. They will all stand at the foot of the owner and will wag their tails a little in laugh and admiration. That's what Mr. Putin stated. And look at this, how he actually states it. This is very well explains to Europeans who they are, that at the foot of their owner. Yes, United States owns Europe, and Europe will do as stated. And what will be stated to Europe? It's already been stated, essentially. Let me quote it for you and translate it in the normal human language. Die. That's what it is. United States wants to eat too, so, and Europe must die as we know it, because obviously, well, guess what? They wanted it. And here it is. These are the consequences of essentially Trump, doing away with all those so-called old European elites, which are impotent, stupid, and yeah, good for him. Let him deal with this because obviously the old Europe, as we know, it must die because it doesn't exist anymore as subject of the international relations, and actually even technological race, it exists only as an object. And this spreads itself, so to speak, with some exceptions like commercial airspace, for example. Obviously, Airbus is beating the, well, pardon my French, crap out of Boeing. But the point is, other than that, if you look attentively, most of it, especially militarily, it's pathetic, downright. And yeah, when you look attentively at the production of the critical materials by Europe, it's yeah, it's not very impressive, to put it mildly. And yes, so Europe will be forced to, well, it's, how to say it, reality, if you wish, of being the American chihuahuas. And there you go, simple as that. And you say, oh, you have the Schadenfreude. In some sense, I do. I'm not gonna lie. I enjoy seeing all those, chihuahuas jumping around and ready, as Vladimir Putin correctly stated, beginning to wag their tails. Fact is, they will be licking boot of Mr. Trump. So, in this respect, Vladimir Putin is absolutely correct, but it is also, well, it's insult to Europe, and Russians have no reason to be to feel anything towards Europe but contempt, and that's exactly what is happening. So, but if that hasn't been enough, we now have this, chihuahuas. Look at this. And the fact is, I need to say that I do use, obviously, RT News for the only reason that it is already translated in English. You can find those news anywhere, but I use them not to machine translated. But other than this, I'm sick and tired of this clickbait policies of those losers when they put that, like, member state calls on NATO to show muscle. Couldn't they write that it is Lithuania, which is NATO, and EU should deploy additional forces to the Baltic Sea? Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda has said NATO should ramp up its presence in the Baltic Sea to discourage Russia or anyone else from engaging in malicious activities there. Lithuanian President Nausėda stated. Well, basically those three statelets, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, they are actually dying out. Demographically, it's catastrophe there, and they will die out eventually, and they will just disappear as the ethnicities. And but the point is that obviously these people and those three statelets and Poland, they are the main drivers of the Russophobia, and this is their main product. Actually, they don't produce much in terms of the tangibles. So, but they produce a lot of Russophobia, and they sell it around in NATO. And so, what they talk about that. They want to constantly kill some Russians. They really do. As Mr. McGregor states in his wonderful interview with Daniel Davis, he says the only reason it's happening right now and Ukrainians are being annihilated in industrial quantities because those people in Washington establishment and Europe, they just want to harm Russia. They want to kill Russian people. They want to kill Russian soldiers, women, children, because this is how, Russophobic they are, and nothing gonna change that in Europe and in Washington. So, but here, Nausėda talks about that following Latvia's initial statement about the damage to the cable, Sweden detained a vessel in connection to what it called aggravated sabotage. Another ship with a Russian crew was detained in Norway. The Washington Post reported, however, citing Western intelligence sources, that the damage to the Baltic Sea infrastructure was likely a result of maritime accident involving poorly maintained ships and inexperienced crews rather than sabotage. Doesn't matter. And you have to keep in mind that those people in for example, in Estonia or Latvia or Lithuania, and Scandinavians, their hatred of Russia is profound. They are just cannot stand Russian gods. And as the result, they continue to believe that somehow NATO fleets, including the US Navy, if they go into the Baltic Sea, they can affect something up to the point that some, nut jobs, offer to, essentially sabotage Russian shipping in Baltic Sea. Well, which will be, of course, the act of war. And here comes the issue which they do not understand. And I spoke about it in my last video, but some people may have missed it. Let me show you something which explains to you how difficult it is. Well, it's actually impossible to do anything about it without NATO navies being sunk. Not just Navy, not some German Bundes, Marine or whatever, or Swedish Navy or what have you. No, we're talking about whatever the combination of the forces they will decide to, use to stop sabotage Russian shipping, and this issue could be addressed really fast, and it's just a matter of how Russians will escalate to it. Let me show you something. This is their Baltic Sea map. As you can see yourself, I deliberately showed you the shoulder, so to speak, between Gulf of Finland, which is near St. Petersburg, and the Kaliningrad region. The length is about 670 kilometers. This is the shoulder, and it allows you to also see the scale of, by far not the largest sea, which is the Baltic Sea, and anything which stands in the naval bases in Kaliningrad, which is Baltic, and near St. Petersburg, or even from the Lake Ladoga, because many missile ships can actually easily go from Neva River into the Lake Ladoga, where they will be very well protected. Russia has the first salvo there, which will sink pretty much anything, for example, what NATO forces will decide to throw at Russian shipping if they ever decide to do this. Well, I mean, sure, they can bring in whatever the number of the USS, Arleigh Burke class with SM-6s. They're not going to help, because obviously Russians already positioned there enough Zircons, which is the hypersonic missile, which is launched, including by the coastal missile complex Bastion. And of course, there's plenty of other missiles in the first salvo on the Russian missile ships of the Baltic Fleet. But this is the news which kind of may have gotten lost from 2 days ago. Let me show you something. As you can see yourself, test launches of Zircon missiles from submarines completed. Zircon hypersonic cruise missiles as part of tests from submarines have been completed. The process of adopting missile into service is underway. Alexander Leonov, General Director and General Designer of the NPO Машиностроения, told reporters, "We have conducted tests. There's a whole program for its adoption into service." If actually Russian surface ships carrying this 1500 kilometer range Mach 10 plus hypersonic weapon wasn't enough, so these are now being deployed at their submarines, nuclear powered submarines of Project 885, which is the Yasin class, and Russia builds them like hotcakes. And so what does it all mean? When you look attentively at the, for example, Baltic theater of operations, well, that's exactly what it means, what I just told you. Any type of the even attempt by anybody trying to stop or sabotage Russian shipping, which is the act of war, it's casus belli, it will be dealt with really fast. It takes only a couple minutes to receive their targeting from Russian recon and targeting systems, ranging from all kinds of the satellites which Russia launches right now, non-stop, including already fully operational Liana, which is specifically designed for the developing of the targeting for the cruise missiles. You have to understand, it takes very little time for Mach 10 missile to cover even 300-400 kilometers. And after that, you cannot stop it. It doesn't matter what combination of the air defense you try to basically deploy to the sea, and thinking that if you think that Aegis and SM-6, let alone all those Asters and whatever the hell they have, they can stop it, I have a breach to sell you. Especially they cannot stop it, not one, well, when it's a salva, when you look at actually at 4, 5, 6 missiles flying your way with Mach 10, and you will not even see them until the last minute, as was the case many times with Kinjals, and there are all kinds of hypersonic things which can essentially sink any number of the NATO ships, including the most modern and numerous, what have you. I mean, yeah, as I already stated, let those Type 45, how many of them, 1.5 or 2.5 that Royal Navy has, try to get into the Baltic Sea and try to do something about Russian shipping and see what's going to happen. And this is not bravado, this is the tactical and technological reality of the war of the 21st century. And that has to be understood together with the, what is happening in the special military operation. And when we look at those numbers, yeah, they better wake up. If they don't, as already stated, Russians will just continue, the steamroller will continue to roll to the west. And as many times has been stated, Russians are really not into the territorial conquest, but you know what? At some point of time, which, well, essentially it's already beginning to happen, other oblasts or regions of Ukraine will necessarily fall into Russian, if not possession, then the sphere of control, and again, nothing could be done with that. Mr. Trump may probably have to hire 4-star American generals. At least they can say, oh, look at me, I have 4 stars. Russians will laugh at them. And this is what is happening. But as Mr. Trump already stated, as you know, the negotiations are going extremely well. Of course, they do not go because they do not exist as such. But what can I say? You know what? Show the PR propaganda is what the Washington establishment lives for, and this is the only thing realistically which they can do in any tangible way when talking with the nuclear superpower, which really don't give a flying coitus essentially about what they have to say in terms of morality, which it doesn't have any. And basically this will be the wrap up which we're already living through. And this is what I wanted to tell you guys today. And in conclusion, as always, I want to express my profound gratitude to my wonderful patrons. And as always, those people who can, want to support me, subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford it, please support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee and two. I will be able to continue to do what I'm doing because of you guys. So I'll talk to you later, guys. Have a nice rest of the week. Bye-bye.